Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Voices of Hult. Today's guest is Chantel. She is part of the Hult family. She's been working for Hult for the past 5 years. She is a visa manager for the postgrad students here in Boston. And we also have a new face from Voices of Hult family. She's Fatih.
Hello. So happy to be on here. And I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you. It was actually funny as soon as they told me, like, would you like to be a host? And Chantel was going to be our guest. It was funny because I spend half of my time applying for visas. So I'm so excited to be on here and have this conversation.
Yeah, I think Fatih has been a heavy user of Chantel's services here in school. So Chantel, tell us a little bit more about you. What are you doing here?
Sure.
Where are you coming from?
Yeah. So a little bit just about me and kind of my upbringing. So I actually was born in South Korea. I'm what you call a third culture kid. So I grew up in a country that was outside of my parents' home country and passport country up until about the age of 14. So I was also an international student. I went to an international school in South Korea. I spent my childhood there and came to the United States to start high school. And so I moved to Massachusetts, where most of my mother's family is from, and went to college out in Ohio, where I actually studied music. So that was my major.
Wow.
And so I'm a classically trained singer, and I do a lot of theater and singing around Boston. So if anyone's looking to come and check out some shows, just let me know. That's definitely something that I've been able to keep up with since college. And then after college, I did a couple of little jobs here and there. I was a substitute teacher at a private school for about 2 years, and then I worked at the YMCA, also in their education program with after-school children. And then eventually I made it over to EF, where I worked at the language school here in Boston. So I was the administrative coordinator for about 2 years. Before that, I was an RA, and I did housing, I did academics. I kind of did it all at EF.
A little bit of everything.
A little
and
of
you have
everything.
a lot of everything.
Yeah.
And stuff. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So eventually I found my way to Hult because I realized that what I really found most fascinating working at EF was actually doing visas. Even though it was a very small component, and the regulations for language learners in the United States is very limited, but it was a way for me to learn more about F1 regulations coming to Hult and learning about the higher education aspect of international learning. So I made my way over to Hult in 2018 and have worked here since, with a really small break in the fall of 2021 when I actually left EF and Hult for a very short time, but realized that I really I loved working with international students, and I loved working at Hult. So I made my way back here pretty quickly, and have no plans to leave anytime soon. I'm going to be here for a really long time.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember when we were talking about you before, you probably are now like one of the most famous and popular
She is.
services here in school. Like, I remember we been talking to you even before coming to Boston, because
Yeah.
you were helping me with my visa process, and I bet you've been talking to everyone. As I was saying, I think Fatih, you've been talking with Chantel before,
Yeah.
right?
She prepped me for the interview for the visa. And I was going to say that even though you mentioned it's a small component, yet it's a deal breaker for international students, because if
Totally.
it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here today, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And I do make it a point. I mean, this is something we'll get into, but I really do make it a point as part of my job to really build that connection even before you come to campus, because we really are going to be with you through your whole journey, and being able to start that off strong with everything you need to know and being upfront and honest is my biggest policy. And being able to just, start that connection early. Yeah.
So also, you mentioned before that when you were working at EF, you were doing a little bit of everything, and that's how you learn a lot about like different ways to work with international students.
Correct. Yeah.
And then you found visas. Team.
Yes.
And you fall in love with it, and that's how you jumped to Hult for this specific role here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about how this is working in Hult. I'm pretty much aware that there is not just like the contact that you have here before coming. There's also the mid part, which is when we are looking for a job position or anything, or maybe a summer internship or anything like that. There are specific terms that you're gonna get into, like the OPT, CPT, and a lot of things that I don't know yet. But nothing. Just let us know a little bit more. I'm pretty sure everyone there is going to be through this process. So,
Yes.
so take notes, please.
Yeah. I mean, one of the really unique things about Hult and about our team, the visa team at Hult, is that we really do it all. A lot of other universities will have a specific department that only does intake. Like you'll see some universities who have, specialized enrollment people who work with international students. And then when they come to campus, they go through an international student services team. And then, they work with the alumni team. So there's different departments that students have to go through during their journey as a student. But at Hult, we do it all. We are with you from the time that you submit your application to Hult all the way to possibly the end of your STEM OPT, which could be as long as 5 years. So we have a really unique perspective, and we're one of the only teams on Hult's campus that has this perspective with students. A lot of other teams, have specialized times that they're with the students. Enrollment really works with students beforehand. A lot of campus teams work with students once they're here, and then there's the alumni team. But we are with you through your entire Hult journey, and so that makes it really unique, specifically on the visa team.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, it starts out with us reaching out to students as soon as they are confirmed in Hult. As soon as you confirm your seat with your enrollment advisor, we step in right away and we say, all right, time to go through what you need to do for your visa process. So each visa coordinator is at least this year, we will sometimes mix it up each year, but each visa coordinator is assigned a cohort of students. So we have one visa coordinator who is primarily working with all of our incoming MIB students. And then we have another coordinator who's working primarily with our incoming finance students. So that way you get to, meet your visa coordinator, but you're also meeting other people in your cohort as you're going through your visa process, and hopefully making those connections even before you come to campus with your peers. So we help with everything from collecting financial documents, as you need to prove that you are financially sound enough to come to the United States, all the way through, issuing your I-20 document, which is the document that you need to apply for your F1 visa. And then we walk you through your mock interview, kind of like we did. And this is completely optional for students. But again, an added benefit to something that our team does is giving you the option to speak with us about what to expect at your interview, to get those nerves out, or to make sure we correct any answers that may be not as accepted if you went in without any help to the embassy. So it's really, and for me personally, I actually love doing mock interviews because it gives me a chance to know who the student is on an even more personal level. We've established a connection up to that point, but then I actually get to hear, why are you coming to the US? Why is it so important for you to get an education here? What have you been doing up to this point that is going to help you in your long-term goals for your career and when you return home? So I love doing those mock interviews because it really gives me an inside look into what you're hoping to accomplish when you come here. So that's kind of the before section, the before stage.
I'm sorry, but I think that mock interview adds a lot of value to the whole process of moving to a different country. I don't know, Fatih, you've been there.
It was very calming for me because I was extremely nervous. Especially that I'm married and I have a spouse, and everyone was telling me you might get rejected because you're married and you're moving with your spouse. So it's a kind of a negative indication. But then when we went through the mock interview, after I was done, I felt like I was just granted the visa.
I'm done. I'm there. Actually, it was just a test.
So I definitely recommend that everyone goes through a mock interview. Because then when you go to the actual interview, you feel like you're ready. I've been there. I've done that. So,
Right. And each individual case, and I say this to students all the time, each individual case is going to be different. True. So, you have a spouse, and maybe at one point it would have kind of been a little bit of a red flag, but to some others it might not. True. And so I try to cater them to also to cater the chats also to just the individual person, what I already know about them, maybe their background, what country they come from. Sometimes, as we do see, some countries it is a little bit more difficult to get a visa than others. And so I try to do my own research to make sure that I go in knowing the student's circumstances just based on a broad view, but then cater it to what they're actually going through in that moment. So
that's basically the before. So what comes next?
So-
Because I'm about to jump there because I'm applying for internships and everything. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take some notes here.
Right. So let's say you got your visa. I mean, you're both here, so you got your visa. We'll send you that congratulatory email and anticipate your check-in to campus. And so that's one of the best days for the visa team. And I'm sure some other teams could also relate to being able to finally see the face to the people that we've been working with, and to see you standing in front of us. And it's gratifying to be able to have students come up to us and say, you're the reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
And I really thank you for putting in all the effort. And I'm like, we're just getting started.
This
That
is
was
step one.
getting the
Until you get your first job.
I know, getting the visa is actually the easy part, So once you're here in the United States, it really then is about maintaining your status. You're in the United States on an F1 visa. So how do you maintain yourself as a student in the United States? So we make sure to have, several conversations throughout the year about making sure you're going to class, because that's obviously the number one reason why you're here. You've spent a lot of money to come here, so might as well get an education.
I've heard from some students like, I'm gonna try to do virtual, and I'm like, well, bye.
Right, yeah. Having the visa and having an F1 and having your I-20 means that you are intending to be in person as a
Correct.
student.
It's a responsibility.
It is,
Important.
and
it's part of the reasons why you're getting a visa.
Exactly.
because you're gonna be here.
Correct. So we're here to just make sure that you understand that, maintaining your status means you're going to class, you're passing all of your classes, you have a physical presence in the United States, so that does mean reporting in person to your classes. And then eventually you could be eligible for certain work authorization. Now, just kind of going through those quickly, the first and easiest kind of work authorization you're allowed to have is on-campus work. So you don't have to get any special authorization through visas. You can just simply you look at the campus and see what possible on-campus jobs are available. In Boston, there aren't that many, but if something is available that interests you, helping out with student services or maybe a tech ambassador, which is kind of one of the more popular ones.
I just got accepted on the student services, so I'm
there you go. There you go.
I'm like, well, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
now?
Exactly.
You have a live example.
There you go.
And you're only allowed to work 20 hours per week, right?
Yes. Because again, we want the focus to be on your
academic
studies.
school.
Yeah. Correct.
So, but if you're helping out around campus, that's great. So that's usually the easiest one. The next type of authorization you're allowed to have is CPT, which is curricular practical training. This comes once you have accrued at least one academic year. Now, this is in U.S. government terms. One academic year for our postgraduate students means that you've been in the United States through your entire fall and entire spring semester. If you have done that and you've maintained your status, you're good on your grades, then in the summer term during electives, you could decide to have an internship. So that's where CPT comes into play. So that's where we want you to, if, again, something that's optional, you obviously don't have to get CPT, completely optional, but if you want to start training in an area where you're getting your degree and you want to get some practical experience out in the field during your last semester, that's where CPT comes into play. Okay. So as long as the job is directly related to your degree and is at your degree level, then that's something that you can participate in. But again, it can only come once you have become eligible by being in the United States and being in status for a specific amount of time. Again, for PGs, that's all through fall and all through spring semester. And with CPT also, it's not just us, it's the career team and also a registrar who approves you for that internship. So careers will actually look at your internship, make sure that it falls into the correct categories of being related to your degree and that you're continuing your learning in that internship. And then it will come to us to actually add as CPT authorization to your I-20, and then it will go to the registrar to add as a internship class during the summer term.
Yeah, so for everyone who's applying for work or summer internships right now, this is going to be super important. I've been applying for a few weeks already, and I think I'm going to need it. So at some point, I'm going to be going back to Chantel and I'm like, hi, it's me again. I need some permits to work here. And I think it's not that hard as long as you get the right documents and everything that the visa team is going to tell you to get.
Right. Do your research.
We're going to be on the start of April. So busy. Team's gonna
Something
be
to look
busy.
forward to. Yeah. And I mean, talk to your career advisor, talk to your peers if there's somebody that who's in an industry that you're interested in, reach out to them. But do your research beforehand so that you have the authorization, or that you have that you have the offer before then you come to us, because that is a requirement. Whereas in OPT, which comes after you have graduated your program, this is optional practical training.
And this is the last stage, right?
This is the second to last stage.
Okay.
So OPT is optional practical training, which comes after, which is post-graduation work authorization.
Yeah.
So once you have successfully, or you are on your way to successfully completing your degree, you can apply for this OPT through the U.S. government. So instead of applying and having this authorization through Hult, this authorization you actually need to get from the government. And this allows you to participate in up to a year of more training and work experience in a field, again, that's directly related to your degree and is at your degree level. So similar rules with CPT, where those things have to match, but this time you're getting the authorization through the government. And
I think the length of the OPT depends on the program that you're doing, or
so it's 1 year standard. But if you graduate with a STEM degree, let's say that you are doing the business, Masters of Business Analytics.
yeah,
Correct.
That is a STEM degree at Hult. There are 2 STEM degrees at Hult. There's Business Analytics and Finance. If you graduate from Hult with one of those degrees, you then can qualify, or possibly qualify, for up to a 2-year extension after your first year of OPT. So a lot of people think that it's like 3 years of OPT, but it's really 1 year of OPT and then a 2-year STEM extension.
That's
Exactly.
gonna be like 3 years after graduating from
Correct.
Hult that you're gonna be able to work. Just like work.
Yeah.
Correct.
Work.
Correct.
Full-time job.
Now, STEM OPT is more specific. It's the similar. There's a similar application process to it, where you still have to apply to the government, but it does the job that you have does need to be related directly to your STEM degree.
Correct.
And other things need to come into play in terms of what the company is and the day-to-day responsibilities that you have with the company, and filling out certain forms. But of course, we host a number of sessions on all of these things. We host sessions on CPT, OPT, and STEM OPT weekly. So for students who may be watching coming in later in the year, just know that these are things that we go into great detail about once you've actually come to campus and once you start to reach that eligibility stage.
I have one question.
Sure.
So I'm gonna be this case that's gonna be doing every single step, because right now I'm doing MIM.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try to do my CPT in this summer.
Sure.
But then I'm gonna do the STEM, which is MBAN.
Okay.
Masters in Business Analytics, which is gonna give me the STEM. During the period that I'm doing my second degree, my dual degree, I can apply for a second CPT.
You can, but just know that your CPT will then have to be directly related to your dual degree.
So I have to do a CPT now related with marketing,
Correct.
and then I can do a CPT related with business analytics.
Correct.
So I'm gonna be working or having 2 internships, and then after I graduate from my second degree, I can do OPT for 1 year, and the other 3 years. So they're
Extension.
basically 4 years working
Possibly,
in the US.
yeah.
If you
And
do-
what's unique about students who do dual degree is that, let's say in your case, you're doing marketing and then analytics. In your first year of OPT, you can do a job related to either of your degrees. But once you do enter the STEM extension, it has to be related to the STEM
Correct.
degree
So-
that you received.
Yeah, that's
Which so that could be a benefit of of pursuing that second degree and doing dual degree.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So just like us, we're asking a lot.
you're asking more than I am.
Because I'm like on it. And tell me, what are like the top 5 questions students usually do?
Yes.
We just
I wrote them
covered
down.
Okay, just go for it.
All right. So the number one question that we actually get is, do I need a visa? Just period. Do I need a visa to the United States?
Well.
And the answer is yes. For anyone who's thinking about coming to Hult, yes, you do need a visa if you are not a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, a legal permanent resident, or are not already in the United States on a different visa that allows for full-time study. If you don't fall into one of those categories, you will need to get an F1 visa. So it's really important that you do, as soon as you know that you're coming to Hult, you confirm your seat, that you do reach out to your assigned visa coordinator to find out your next steps for getting your visa.
In my case, I never asked that question because I need visas everywhere.
Yeah, I was like, do I need a visa? I was like, come on.
Yeah. And I mean, the United States is one of those countries, because I know that other countries have different types of visas for study or for business, but the United States only has one visa, and it is one visa for study. So everyone has to apply for that visa to come to Hult. Yeah.
Good. Let's go for the second one.
The second question that comes up is, how long will my visa be valid for? And a lot of times people confuse your I-20 with your visa, because it is a little bit confusing with F1 being listed on your I-20, but that's not your visa. So the I-20 you receive from the institution, and your visa you get from the embassy. Now the embassy has the full discretion to decide how long your visa will be valid for. Pre-pandemic, most students in most countries would get 5-year visas, because they would just assume that you're going to be studying, especially at like a master's level or even undergrads, that you're studying for long term, and that you can continue to use that visa to continue your studies wherever you go. Since the pandemic, some countries have been a little bit more strict on the length of the visa. So we've seen everything from 1 month visa to 5 years.
That's like not getting the visa at all.
So then, with those things, it's very, you have to be very strategic about when you get in. But
because it means that if you get that 1 month, you can come into the country.
Basically the one time,
And with your I-20, you can stay here.
Correct.
But once you leave, you cannot come back.
Exactly. So when students ask, how long is my visa going to be valid for, we honestly have to say we're not sure, because that's going to be at the discretion of the embassy. So, go to your appointment, hopefully you're approved for your visa, and then when you get your passport back from the embassy, take a look at that validity date. And if there is anything you have a question about, then you reach out to your visa coordinator or anyone on the visa team to kind of follow up with anything that you might have to follow up with if you have to in the first place.
Yeah, mine is for 1 year, and I have friends that have it for 5 years.
Exactly.
I have it for 5 years.
You see there's a difference. And in my case, since I'm doing the dual degree, I'm probably going to have to go back to renew it, just because I want to travel afterwards. My 1 year is expired.
Right.
I'm going to prefer to go back, renew it in the few weeks that we're going to be off school, in order to afterwards being able to fly back to Peru whenever I want. If I want to go Puerto Rico, Panama, anywhere, being able to do it. Being able to come back and keep studying.
Right. In that case, if you know that you're going to be traveling after your visa expires, then of course you have to get it renewed. But also know that once you come into the United States and you still have that valid I-20, just because your visa expires doesn't mean that you have to leave.
Correct.
As long as you stay within U.S. borders and your I-20 is still valid, you're allowed to remain in the United States. So, the choice of traveling is completely up to each person. But just know that it's not a need to have to get your visa renewed just because it expires while you're in the country. Another question is, how do I qualify for work authorization? So, of course, a really big perk about studying in the United States is the ability to eventually have that work authorization. But again, it really comes down to your eligibility, your status, when you come into the United States, how long you maintain that in-person presence, and then being able to qualify after that point. So kind of like what we'd already gone through with talking about CPT and OPT. But we kind of urge new students for intake. Right now your focus is just on getting your visa. We'll explain all of this in person when you actually get to campus. It's good to have those questions ahead of time, but focusing on what the next step is what really we want to make sure people get through
first.
It
helps with the long-term planning.
Exactly.
We're all coming here for long-term,
exactly.
not just short-term. So,
There's
going to be a lot of people trying to figure out, okay, if I'm going there, can I work there or not?
Right.
That, I know, easy answer will be yes, you will be able to work under different, stages or types of visas or permits.
Right.
We're going to explain you more here. First, manage to come here.
Exactly. Let's focus on the task at hand, and then once we get through that, then we can move on to the next and the next and the next.
Correct.
So,
The
fourth question is always a really big one, especially as we get into kind of the end of year for some people. How do I apply for a work visa? And our answer is talk to an immigration attorney. There's only so much that we on the visa team can advise on when it comes to non-F1 status, because we're legally not lawyers. We can't give that kind of information because we don't have that much training on it and we're not certified. So when there are questions about, how a company can sponsor you on a visa that's not F1, let's say that you've done your whole year of OPT and then the company does want to sponsor you, at that point, it's really out of our hands because you're switching out of our visa status.
Yeah.
So you really do want to, of course, do your research, but reach out to a legal counsel that can actually give you legal information on how to do that. So here in Boston, at least, there's a really good law firm that will usually recommend to students, and they come to campus once a year and they'll give some information as well. So if you ever have those questions, again, kind of thinking long term, at that point you'll want to seek outside counsel to assist with that.
Yeah.
I would like to think that if a company is offering you to sponsor your visa, they will actually help you with the process. I would like to think.
And I mean,
If
ideally
not,
they should.
I think anyways, Hult is doing its part, saying we cannot assist you,
Right.
but they can. And
Right.
these are recommendations who to go with to help you.
Right, exactly. Because at that point, it's the company's responsibility to then take on the ownership of helping with that sponsorship.
True.
Because you're leaving the F1 status. So seek legal counsel outside of Hult if that does apply to you in the future. And then I guess the last kind of big question that comes up is, can I have dependents who come to the United States with me? So dependents, as defined by the government, is either a spouse or children. And the answer is yes. The dependent visa is the F2 visa.
Yes.
So the F1 is the actual student, and then the F2 are basically glorified tourists, as I like to say at that point.
They can stay basically longer than 6 months.
Correct.
They can stay for a year without having to leave and come back.
Correct. They basically can stay in the United States for the duration of the F1.
Yeah.
And whatever happens with the F1 also will happen to the F2. So, if you obviously come to study, the F2 or F2s can be in the United States for that length. If the F1 applies for OPT, then the F2s can also stay in the country for that length as well. If the F1 transfers to another school, then obviously the F2s would travel with them. So yes, you are allowed to have dependents in the United States. Just know that there are some limits as to what they can do as well, especially if you have a spouse who's joining. F2s cannot work and they cannot study full-time. F2 children kind of depends on what you're looking for your children. If they want to go to school, I'd say reach out to the institution where you're thinking of sending your children. They will kind of advise you on what they can do with F2.
Got it.
Yeah.
Good. So you've been answering everyone's questions. Now it's your turn. As always, we have one question that one of our past guests made without knowing who was coming. And this is the question for you. So the question will be, what's a dream of yours that you never shared out loud?
That I never shout out loud. I was a very talkative child. So even as a child, I was always telling people what I wanted to do. But I guess one thing that I didn't really tell too many people is I always wanted to be an astronomer. Somebody who studies the stars and studies, the solar system. I took classes in college around it because I needed a science credit, and I was like, this is cool. And it really was. It was a lot of fun. It was one of my favorite classes outside of my music responsibilities. But I'm fascinated with the universe, and I'm fascinated with just the idea that, we're just this tiny little marble in this big open space, and what else is out there. So I guess that's kind of something that I've always wanted to do.
Good. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
What about you, Fatih?
Wow. Well, my ambition was to be a dancer.
Oh.
But I come from a family of high achievers, and just dancing didn't really
Feed on.
I didn't feel
be
like
a
there
high
was a
achieving
safe space
dancer.
where I can actually be like, I'd love to quit school and just go dance.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's never too late.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've always dreamed, just like you,
Yeah.
I've been a super talkative person. I also dance in school. I've played volleyball. So I've always wanted to be a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Even before start studying marketing, I wanted to be a doctor.
Nice.
So I don't know, like,
A specific field where you think it?
I don't know, I was just like, I'm more like picturing myself, I don't know what doing what.
Yeah.
But somewhere, which
Yeah.
is
Gotcha.
gonna be on the beach, living
Yeah.
on the
Yeah, yeah,
beach in a sunny
I'm
place.
a beach
That
girl
is my
as
that's
well,
my dream.
so I totally get it.
Okay, so now we're gonna invite you to make a question for our next guest.
Perfect.
Just to wrap up the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So, do
So
you have
my-
any question for?
I do. So my question for the next guest is, I guess, kind of similar to this one. When you were 5 years old, what were you telling people you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh,
So maybe not to yourself, but what were you just outwardly saying to people?
Correct.
I'll tell you what I was outwardly telling people when I was 5 years old is I wanted to be a basketball player.
Oh, nice.
And I said, I'm going to join the WNBA. And I was the tallest kid in my class up through 7th grade. And then everybody else shot up. And I said, well, I guess that dream is gone.
Well, we invite you all to reply to that question on the comments. But nothing, Chantel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
think-
Such a pleasure.
Yeah.
I think
honestly.
everyone is listening is gonna be like taking notes like crazy,
Yeah.
and I think this is gonna like be super useful for a lot of Hult students
Yeah.
and future Hult students.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, definitely. If you are an incoming student, reach out to your visa coordinator. We're here to help you. If you're an on-campus student, come and see us. We want to be able to talk to you if it's
Yeah.
to talk shop or to just say hi. So that's what we're here for.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you
Thank you.
all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.